Now, during a Good Friday service at the Eagle Church in Mangaung, President Cyril Ramaphosa asked churchgoers and citizens to pray for the government, the IEC, and peaceful elections ahead of the 29th of May. Ramaphosa added that there will be people who criticize the institutions but fell short of mentioning former President Jacob Zuma's Umkhonto weSizwe Party. There are growing concerns around the political tensions in KwaZulu-Natal and the safety of the upcoming elections. Now, joining us now to unpack this further is political analyst and director at the Center for Security, Peace and Conflict Resolution at Nelson Mandela University, Professor Ntsikelelo, who's talking to us about this developments. Dr. Breakfast, a very good morning to you.
Thank you very much for having me, Kwena.
Let's start there. I guess maybe on a serious, but to a certain extent, a lighter note. Do prayers work when it comes to elections and politics?
Well, in my subjective opinion, yes, they do. 80% of the people of this country, according to Stats SA, they subscribe to different religious beliefs. So that must be respected. Throughout history, different faith-based organizations have always contributed to our country in terms of our democratic architecture. And I think they have a responsibility to pray for the country, because they have also fought for the freedom that we have, or for the freedoms that we have.
And I guess that's why we are seeing, Professor Breakfast, a number of leaders, especially now being the Easter weekend, which is a very strong religious holiday, as it were. Many leaders going to churches and showing up at different churches trying to speak to the congregants, as it were.
Yes, because that's where people converge. Of course, there are other political reasons, because politicians also sometimes are given a platform to campaign, but whether that is right or not, that's another discussion altogether.
So, one thing that the president spoke about was the issue of praying for the elections, but peaceful elections. And on that, Professor Breakfast, the issue has always been that there seems to be, albeit very subtle, some sort of threats, and to be blunt about it, the Umkhonto weSizwe Party has been talking about disrupting elections if things do not go their way.
Yeah, I think as political analysts, we need to be responsible and not instill unnecessary fear. Elections by nature, they denote political competition. So obviously, when you are contesting state power, there will be ups and downs, there will be moments of madness, but there must be a substantive reason for any analyst to say that elections will not be free and fair. The only way I, for one, can make that argument is when, for instance, there are no-go areas, when leaders of the opposition parties are not allowed to criticize the government of the day, when maybe we live in a police state or in a military state. But I don't think that will go down that road. If you look at, for instance, the democracy of the US, it has been around for more than 300 years. But in the previous elections of 2020, we saw the supporters of Trump displaying violence on a large scale, but those electoral outcomes were accepted. They were not regarded as not being free and fair. Now, our democracy is not even 50 years old, not even 35 years old. Our democracy was born in 1994, for crying out loud. So obviously, there will be tensions. Yes, there have been unfortunate statements that have been made of late by the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, but I don't think that we can deduce from them and say that the upcoming general elections will not be free and fair. We can encourage maybe the security forces to be on standby and to be vigilant by intercepting security threats which are posing danger. But to say that the elections will not be free and fair, I think it's creating an unnecessary panic.
And I mean, traditionally, Professor Breakfast, South Africa, over the past 30 years, we've had relatively free and fair elections. We've never really, in comparison really, if you think about some of the other countries within the continent and beyond, South Africa, as far as the IEC and elections, we have really done well, isn't it?
Of course, I mean, the IEC has a history of facilitating free and fair elections. I think we've never had elections that were declared not free and fair. The most contested elections we've ever had were the first ones, the 1994 ones. And in 1994, there were pockets of violence, maybe not on a large scale, but still the electoral outcomes were declared free and fair. I was following the developments in the DRC of late in terms of the elections that they had. Opposition parties were complaining, the media was complaining, but still the international observers declared those elections as free and fair. And we are not even closer to that. So I'm very much optimistic. I'm not saying that we must settle for less or the way things are is the way things should be. Yes, we can improve, but I don't think that we'll have elections which are not free and fair.
Let's touch on KwaZulu-Natal, which is expected to be a hotly contested terrain. I mean, we've also seen the EFF, ANC, MK, amongst others, going to launch their manifestos in KwaZulu-Natal. How competitive do you think this will be? And also looking at the fact that historically, KwaZulu-Natal has a history of political tension, violence, and killings.
Yes, Kwena, KZN has a history of violence, in particular in the late 80s and the early 90s. But also KZN is one of the biggest provinces that we have. It's the second largest province, so that's why it is under the spotlight. But I also think that the ANC is running a risk of being dislodged from the helm of power since 2004. So that's why the stakes are high. But it looks like, in my opinion, there won't be an outright winner, and that will create a scope for a coalition arrangement.
And I mean, looking at a party like MK, which is relatively new, many pundits are already saying that it's expected to make some serious inroads in KwaZulu-Natal, naturally, because of former President Jacob Zuma, albeit there's still some issues around his running in this instance. But by virtue of him aligned with this particular party and the support that he has, definitely there will be a chunk of supporters and voters that will go his way.
For sure. I mean, my view is that even if there was no Mkondo Wesizwe, I don't think that the ANC was going to stand a chance of winning elections in KZN. So the ushering in of Mkondo Wesizwe compounds the situation for the ANC. It makes it worse. I thought the IFP stands a good chance, and that is based on the fact that they did very well in terms of their electoral performance of the previous local government elections. But also Mkondo Wesizwe does not only pose a threat to the electoral performance of the ANC, but also poses a threat to the electoral performance of the IFP. So it will take away votes from those political parties. That's why I'm arguing that it looks like there won't be an outright winner in a KZN, and that will create a scope for a coalition arrangement.
And just finally then, Professor Breakfast, the EFF also launching its manifesto there, and very, from if we have to judge by the stadium attendance, they look like they will have some sort of support there. How much of a role do you think they will play in the outcome, and how much of a percentage, roughly, do you think they will take in terms of voters?
My view is that filling up a stadium has no political meaning, because it doesn't mean that those people will vote for the party. But at the same time, I think, the EFF is one of the largest political parties throughout the length and the breadth of the country. And it will be an important player in forming a government there. I think also there is an ideological convergence between the EFF and Mkondo Wesizwe, which is a radical economic transformation. So the political proximity of the EFF is closer to Mkondo Wesizwe and maybe to the ANC. But I don't think the EFF, because of its historical links with Mkondo Wesizwe and former President Zuma, would want to join forces with the ANC. I think it would rather opt to join forces with Mkondo Wesizwe in terms of forming a government there.